In this video, we'll get an overview of the Jira user interface. So this is what Jira looks like when you first log in. Now, if you log in to your Jira instance and it doesn't look exactly like this, don't worry. Your Jira administrator actually has the ability to control what this looks like when you first log in. So it could look completely different. However, we'll actually cover some of that on the administrative side, how to set that kind of thing up later on in this course. But for this particular video, let's cover some of the things that really are going to be the same no matter what. And that's really this bar up here, kind of talking about this navigation bar. So up here on the top left-hand side, we have the app switcher. That's this little hamburger button here. So if you click on that, you'll have the ability to hop back to Jira, to Confluence. If your team has Confluence, which is a great wiki, it's great for documentation and things like that, or Bamboo, which is great for your engineering team to be able to administer tests and things like that for your development. You can switch between those up here. And then your Jira administrator also has the ability to add links in here. So if you have any other internal tools or maybe any other tools that your team uses, it can be really a quick way of linking to those up here. And then that way you can make Jira kind of the one stop, like you go to Jira and then from there you can link to wherever you need to. So that's the app switcher up here. It's a really nice, handy feature that is, once again, customizable by your administrator. And then you have the logo. Now, right now, this just says Jira. Once again, this is customizable, so you can put your company logo or whatever you want up here. But when you click on it, it's going to take you to your Jira home. So right now, my Jira home is set to this particular dashboard. You can change what your Jira home is over here on the right-hand side. If you click on your profile picture, you can change it to be the dashboard, which is what this is here. You can change it to be your agile boards, which would be this. And then you can change it to be the issue navigator. So we'll look at the boards and issue navigator later on in this course as well. But I just want to point out that you can change what your homepage is when you log into Jira. So if you change this to your Agile boards, if you really primarily use Jira for Agile, then that's great. You can just log in and it will take you straight to your Agile board right away. If you primarily use Jira for an issue tracker, then once again, that's great. You can just set that to be your default homepage. When you log into Jira, it'll take you there directly. Up here to the right of the Jira home link is dashboards. So you can see this is the system dashboard, the default one that comes when you first set up Jira. You can actually create your own dashboards, and we'll look at that later on, creating dashboards. You can share them with your team. You can see dashboards that other people have shared with you. All of that we'll look at later on, but this is where you can access that. You can access your various projects. So you can see there's no projects up here right now. It's just because I haven't gone to any projects yet. So if I were to view and go to a project, if I look at all the projects here and then click on one of them to actually browse to it, you can see there's only one project so far. So if I click on that project, now if I come back to my Jira home, that will take me back to the dashboard. And then we can click on projects and you can see the project that I went to recently instead of before there was no project there. So that's just something that's really helpful to keep in mind because that's really the same for projects, for the dashboard. If you go to another dashboard, it'll show up here. If you go to issues, so if you're searching for issues, you can see here's a recent issue that I actually visited. You can see that kind of list growing in here, and you'll be able to access those things very, very quickly. So this is the issue navigator. We'll look at this later on in this course as well, but this is where you would find it. And then your Agile boards, and once again, if you went to an Agile board, you would see that in this drop-down list here of the recent boards you visited, or you can view all of the boards that you have access to here. And then just to the right is the create button. So this is going to allow you to create a new issue. So you can see like an issue over here. Here's a demo issue called What's Next. right? So you could create a new issue if you wanted to. Click on create. That'll take you to this create new issue screen. And don't worry, we'll cover this later on. But I just want to point out that this is where you would go to create a new issue, call it whatever you want, and then actually create that. And that would then you could find that in the issue navigator. You can put it on your Agile board, whatever you want. And we'll cover issues later on in this course, but this is where you go to create that. And then a quick search for issues, you can do that up here at the top. So if you wanted to find an issue, you could do that. When you actually search for something, it'll then take you to the issue navigator, which would be very similar to if you went here. So this is just going to be a quick search. You can come to the issue navigator and go to search for issue, and that will take you to a more advanced search there. And then you also have help. So if you ever get stuck with Jira, I'd really, really recommend kind of digging through some of the documentation, especially if you're a team leader, a manager, or an administrator. Digging through the documentation is a great way to learn all about how Jira works. And Atlassian really has some great documentation to help you do that. And then over here is your profile for your particular user. That's really the last thing I want to cover in this particular video is covering the profile. So let's come into the profile here. All right, so in here we have the ability to adjust things like if we wanted to change our name, so or our email or password, you could do that in here. Just click on the edit in order to change any of those. Once again, things like this information can be updated by your Jira administrator. So if you do get locked out for whatever reason, you can reach out to your Jira administrator and they can reset your password for you. And then you also have your default preferences. So right now the Jira default is set to a particular time zone because I am in the central time zone. That's what it sets the default to. But if you did want to change this, because a lot of teams are global these days, so if you have a different time zone than the rest of your team, you can set that, and then Jira will know for your particular user what that time should look like for things like due dates and all the times, when an issue is created or updated or all that kind of stuff. You can adjust that in here. And you can also turn on and off keyboard shortcuts, things like that. We'll cover a lot of this kind of stuff later on in this course. As we're doing things, we'll kind of show some of the keyboard shortcuts and stuff like that. But once again, if you want to get a list of all the keyboard shortcuts, you can come up here and open this up, and that will take you to show you all of the keyboard shortcuts here within Jira. And trust me, there's a lot of them, so we won't actually cover every single one, but we'll show some of them in like practical uses and things like that, and you can see all of those here. And then finally, you have the activity stream. So I really haven't done anything with this particular account yet, but if you create a new issue, if you comment on an issue, you can see this stream of things that you've been doing. But what's really nice is you can actually see this for any user. So if I wanted to, let me hop back to my dashboard here real quick. Hop to, say, this is another user. So this is the administrator. If I actually click on this, I can see the activity stream for this particular user. So you can see here's an issue that this user created and other issues that have been created. I can just look at this on their profile, or I could actually subscribe to it as an RSS feed, which is really helpful because you can find a user and then subscribe to the updates that they do. So for example, if you want to subscribe to the updates from your team leader, any new issues that they create or things like that, you could actually do that very, very easily using this feed here inside of Jira. All right, so that's a look at kind of the basic interface. We'll cover things like this dashboard down here later on in this course, but hopefully now you kind of have an idea of how these different menus can be used, how you can come into your profile, adjust your profile, change your picture. You can just click on the picture in order to edit that, upload a new picture if you want to let your team see your smiling face, and hopefully you kind of have an idea of how to move around and navigate here with Jira. All right, so let's move on to our next video where we'll talk about projects.